This isn't jealousy. It's an investigation.
The text message arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it changed everything. "You're sleeping in the garage tonight. Derek's coming over, and I need you gone." I stared at my phone screen, sitting in my home office where I'd been reviewing classified surveillance reports for the Department of Homeland Security. Emily didn't know what I really did for work. To her, I was just Nick Granger, boring government paper pusher who spent his days filing reports and attending meetings. The irony wasn't lost on me that, while I tracked international security threats for a living, I'd completely missed the one brewing in my own bedroom. My wife of 12 years had just kicked me out of my own house for another man. I saved my work files, locked the classified documents in my safe, and walked to the kitchen where Emily was loading the dishwasher. She looked up with that fake smile she'd been wearing for months. "Did you get my message?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah, I got it." I kept my voice steady, professional. Years of interrogation training had taught me to control my reactions. "Derek Miles, right? The customs officer from your yoga class?" Her face flushed. "How did you—" "Lucky guess." I grabbed my keys from the counter. "I'll be at the Hampton Inn on 5th Street, room 237 if there's an emergency." "Nick, wait." She touched my arm, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt? Fear? "Maybe we should talk about this." "Talk about what? You've made your position pretty clear." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Emily? Next time you want to discuss your boyfriend's stamina with Karen and Gina, maybe close the kitchen window. The whole neighborhood doesn't need to hear about Derek's impressive performance." I left her standing there with her mouth open and drove to the hotel. The Hampton Inn smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. I checked in, went to my room, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. 12 years of marriage, and this is how it ended. Not with counseling or honest conversation, but with a text message banishing me to sleep in the garage like a disobedient dog. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Cody. "How's married life treating you, secret agent man?" Cody was the only person outside my department who knew what I really did. We'd served together in the Army before I joined DHS, and he had security clearance for his job as a defense contractor. I typed back, "Currently sleeping at the Hampton Inn. Emily has a boyfriend." My phone rang immediately. "What the heck happened?" Cody's voice was sharp with concern. "She kicked me out so her boyfriend could come over. Some guy named Derek Miles." "Jesus, Nick, I'm sorry. What are you going to do?" "I honestly don't know yet." I rubbed my temples. "Part of me wants to just walk away. Let her have her exciting new life with Derek." "And the other part?" I was quiet for a long moment. "The other part of me remembers that I'm very good at finding things out about people, and Derek Miles just became a person of interest. Be careful, man. Don't do anything that'll get you in trouble at work. I'm always careful." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and accessed the DHS personnel database. Derek Miles, age 37, worked for Customs and Border Protection. Clean record, decent performance reviews, divorced 2 years ago. On paper, he looked like a regular guy, but I'd learned long ago that paper only told part of the story. I was about to dig deeper when my phone exploded with notifications. 47 missed calls, all from Emily. Then a text that made me sit up straight. "Please come back. He saw your photo, Googled your name, and left. Who the heck are you?" I smiled for the first time all evening. Apparently, Derek had done his homework and discovered that Nick Granger wasn't just some boring office worker. My DHS profile was mostly classified. But there was enough public information to make it clear I wasn't someone you wanted to mess with. I turned off my phone and went to sleep. Emily could wonder about my identity all night. I had planning to do. The next morning, I drove to work like nothing had happened. The DHS regional office looked like any other government building, gray concrete, metal detectors, and bored security guards who didn't know that some of us actually did interesting work behind those bland office doors. My supervisor, Director Patricia Walsh, called me into her office at 9 a.m. sharp. "Nick, I need you to review the background check on a new customs officer transferring to our joint task force, Derek Miles. Know anything about him?" I kept my expression neutral. "Should I?" "His name came up in our system overnight. Someone ran an unauthorized query on him from an outside IP address." She slid a file across her desk. "The query was traced back to the Hampton Inn. Isn't that interesting?" Seriously, I'd forgotten about the automatic flags on government employee searches. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But first, look at this file." There are some things about Mr. Miles that might interest you. I opened Derek's complete personnel file and my jaw tightened. 3 inappropriate workplace behavior complaints in the past 5 years, all settled quietly. A pattern of targeting married women at work functions. 2 restraining orders from ex-girlfriends, and a note that he was currently under investigation for using his customs position to intimidate the husband of a woman he was pursuing. This is the man my wife is seeing, I said quietly. Director Walsh nodded. I figured as much when your home address popped up in connection with his file. Nick, I'm going to be very clear with you. Whatever personal issues you're dealing with, they cannot interfere with your professional responsibilities. Are we understood? Completely. Good. However, she leaned back in her chair. If you happen to discover information about potential misconduct by a federal employee during the course of your regular duties, that would be a different matter entirely. I understood perfectly. She was giving me permission to investigate Derek, as long as I did it by the book. I spent the morning reviewing Derek's case files and building a psychological profile. The man was a predator who specifically targeted married women, using his federal badge to intimidate their husbands. Emily wasn't his first victim. She was just his latest. At lunch, I drove to Emily's office building and waited in the parking garage. I wanted to see them together, to understand what she saw in him. They emerged from the elevator at 12:30, Derek's hand possessively on Emily's lower back. He was handsome in a generic way, tall, broad shoulders, the kind of confident smile that probably worked well on lonely housewives. Emily was laughing at something he said, looking more animated than I'd seen her in years. They got into his black pickup truck, and I followed at a distance to a restaurant downtown. Through the window, I watched them share lunch like any normal couple. Derek kept touching her hand, her arm, marking his territory. Emily soaked up the attention. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. We need to talk when you get home from work. I typed back, I don't live there anymore, remember? You can call me if you need something. She called immediately. Nick, please, I made a mistake. Derek got scared when he found out about your job and broke things off. I want to work this out. What exactly did he find out about my job? I don't know. He Googled you and went white as a sheet. Said something about not wanting to mess with federal agents. What do you really do? I watched through the restaurant window as Derek fed Emily a bite of his sandwich. I'll come by the house tonight at 7. We can talk then. Thank you. I love you, Nick. I hung up without responding. Emily thought Derek had broken up with her, but I was watching him kiss her neck in a public restaurant. Either she was lying to me or Derek was lying to her. Given his history, I suspected both. I arrived at the house at exactly 7 p.m. Emily had cooked dinner, my favorite pot roast, and set the table with our good china. She was trying hard to reset our relationship, but I could see the guilt written all over her face. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I know I hurt you terribly. Tell me about Derek. She flinched. There's nothing to tell. It's over. Emily, I followed you to lunch today. I saw you together, so let's try this again. Tell me about Derek. Her face crumpled. How did you follow us? What kind of work do you really do? I investigate people who pose threats to national security. It's given me certain skills. I cut a piece of pot roast, chewing slowly. Skills that make me very good at finding out the truth. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to save you from making a terrible mistake. Derek Miles has a history of targeting married women. You're not special to him, Emily. You're just convenient. She stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. 3 inappropriate conduct complaints, 2 restraining orders, currently under investigation for stalking. I kept eating calmly. He's done this before, and he'll do it again. The only question is how much damage he does to your life before moving on to his next victim. Emily's face went pale. You're lying. I have copies of the files if you'd like to see them. She sat back down heavily. Even if that's true, it doesn't change what's wrong with our marriage. I've been unhappy for years, Nick. You're never here, and when you are, you're distant and distracted. Derek makes me feel alive. Derek is using you. At least he sees me. When was the last time you really looked at me, Nick? When did we last have a real conversation about anything other than bills and schedules? She had a point, and we both knew it. I'd been so focused on work that I'd neglected my marriage, but that didn't excuse what she'd done. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to have an affair and kick me out of my own house. I was going to ask for a divorce after Derek and I... She stopped herself. After Derek and you what? Nothing. It doesn't matter now. But it did matter. I could see it in her eyes. Derek had made her promises he had no intention of keeping. The classic predator playbook. My phone rang. Cody's name appeared on the screen. I need to take this. I stepped into the living room. What's up? Nick, you need to know something about your wife's boyfriend. I did some asking around. Derek Miles has been bragging at bars about his latest conquest. Says he's got some government worker's wife wrapped around his finger and he's planning to clean out her bank accounts before disappearing. I felt ice in my veins. What else? He's done this before, at least 3 times in the past 5 years. Targets married women, gets them to leave their husbands, then empties their savings and disappears. The women are too embarrassed to report it. I looked back at Emily, who was clearing the dinner dishes with shaking hands. She wasn't just being unfaithful. She was being conned by a professional. Thanks, Cody. I owe you one. I walked back to the kitchen. Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Has Derek asked you about our finances? She froze with a plate halfway to the sink. Why would you ask that? Has he mentioned that we should start planning our future together. He said he could help me get a fair settlement in the divorce. What kind of help? He knows people who could make sure I get half of everything, including your retirement accounts. Her voice was barely a whisper. I nodded grimly. Derek wasn't just after Emily. He was after our life savings. And Emily, desperate for attention and validation, was about to hand it all over to him. Emily, you need to listen to me very carefully. Derek is not who you think he is. Before I could explain, the doorbell rang. Emily's face lit up with panic and something else, anticipation. I'll get it, I said. I opened the door to find Derek Miles standing on my front porch, holding a bouquet of roses. He was bigger than he'd looked from a distance, probably 6'2", with the build of someone who spent serious time in the gym. You must be Nick, he said with a confident smile. I'm Derek. I think we need to talk. Derek stepped into my house like he owned it, his eyes scanning the room with the practiced assessment of someone used to sizing up opposition. He handed the roses to Emily, who accepted them with trembling hands. These are beautiful, she whispered. Nothing but the best for you, sweetheart. Derek's voice carried the smooth confidence of a man who had never been told no. He turned to me with that same predatory smile. Nick, right? Emily's told me so much about you. I'm sure she has. I closed the door and leaned against it, blocking his exit route. Old habits from my tactical training. What brings you by, Derek? Well, I figured it was time we had a man-to-man conversation. Clear the air, you know? He draped his arm around Emily's shoulders, a territorial gesture that made my jaw clench. Emily and I have something special, and I think it's best if we handle this situation like adults. What kind of situation are we talking about? Derek's smile widened. The kind where you step aside gracefully and let Emily move on with her life. I understand this might be hard for you, but sometimes people grow apart. It's nobody's fault. I looked at Emily, who couldn't meet my eyes. Is that what you want, Em? For me to step aside gracefully? Nick, please, don't make this harder than it has to be, she said quietly. Harder than what? Harder than being kicked out of my own house via text message? Harder than watching my wife of 12 years throw away our marriage for a man she's known for 3 months? Derek's expression hardened slightly. Look, Nick, I get that you're upset, but Emily's made her choice. The question is whether you're going to respect that choice or make things ugly. Ugly. I repeated the word slowly. That's an interesting choice of words. What exactly would ugly look like, Derek? I think you know. His hand moved to Emily's waist, pulling her closer. I know what you do for work, Nick. Impressive stuff. But this is personal, not professional. And in personal matters, sometimes the better man wins. The threat was subtle but clear. Derek was using his knowledge of my job to intimidate me, while simultaneously challenging my masculinity. It was a clever psychological play, make me feel like I had too much to lose professionally while attacking my pride personally. The better man, I mused. Tell me, Derek, what makes you the better man? I make Emily happy. I pay attention to her. I make her feel like a woman instead of just a roommate. His fingers traced along Emily's arm as he spoke. When was the last time you really looked at your wife, Nick? I mean, really looked at her? Emily's face flushed, and I could see she was caught between embarrassment and arousal at Derek's public claim on her. You're right, I said quietly. I haven't been paying enough attention to Emily. That's my fault, and I own it. But I have been paying attention to other things, like background checks, employment records, financial investigations. Derek's confident expression flickered for just a moment. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about Sandra Martinez in El Paso, and Jennifer Walsh in Phoenix, and Rebecca Chen in San Diego. I watched his face carefully as I spoke. Should I keep going, or do you want to explain to Emily what happened to those women after they left their husbands for you? The color drained from Derek's face. Emily looked confused, glancing between us. I don't know what you're talking about, Derek said, but his voice had lost its smooth confidence. Sandra lost $37,000 from her savings account. Jennifer lost her house. Rebecca lost her retirement fund. I stepped closer to them. They all thought they were starting new lives with a man who loved them. Instead, they got financially destroyed by a con artist who disappeared the moment he got what he wanted. Nick, what are you saying? Emily's voice was barely a whisper. I'm saying your boyfriend is a professional predator, Em. This isn't love. It's a business transaction, and you're the product being sold. Derek's mask finally slipped completely. You don't know what you're talking about, you government desk jockey. Emily came to me because you're a boring, neglectful husband who can't satisfy his own wife. Derek, Emily gasped. What? It's true. You told me yourself he hasn't touched you in months. Said he's more interested in his classified files than his own bedroom. The humiliation in Emily's eyes cut deeper than any physical blow could have. Not just because Derek was airing our private problems, but because he was right. I had neglected her, and now that neglect was being used against both of us as leverage. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Your house? Derek laughed. From what Emily tells me, you won't have it much longer. Community property laws are a beautiful thing. That's when I realized Derek had already convinced Emily to file for divorce. This whole evening, the dinner, the apologies, the tears, it was all an act designed to keep me calm while they executed their plan. Emily, is that true? Have you already filed papers? She couldn't look at me. My lawyer says it's better to get ahead of these things. Your lawyer? I nodded slowly. Let me guess. Someone Derek recommended? Derek's triumphant smile told me everything I needed to know. He had orchestrated this entire situation, probably from the moment he first approached Emily at her yoga class. The affair, the emotional manipulation, the legal strategy. It was all part of a carefully planned con designed to separate Emily from her money and leave me holding the bag. You're good, I told Derek. I'll give you that. How long have you been planning this? Since you first saw Emily's wedding ring and ran a credit check on our address? I have no idea what you're talking about. Sure you don't. I pulled out my phone. Emily, I'm going to make a call. When I'm done, Derek is going to leave, and you and I are going to have a very different conversation. Who are you calling? Derek demanded. Someone who's been looking for you for a very long time. I dialed Director Walsh's direct line. Patricia, it's Nick. I found our missing customs officer. He's standing in my living room right now, and I think you're going to want to have a conversation with him about those missing evidence funds from the Phoenix investigation. Derek bolted for the door. Derek made it exactly 3 blocks before I caught up with him. Years of tactical training and a very motivated mindset tend to give you an advantage over panicked con artists, even ones with a 40-pound weight advantage. I'd left Emily standing in our living room, staring at my phone, as Director Walsh explained exactly what Derek Miles was suspected of stealing from federal evidence lockups. Turned out his romantic cons were just a side business. His main source of income was skimming cash and valuables from seized contraband before it could be properly cataloged. Derek had parked his black pickup truck at the end of our street, probably planning a quick getaway if things went badly. He was fumbling with his keys when I appeared beside his driver's side window. Going somewhere? He spun around, eyes wide with panic. Stay away from me, Nick. I'm warning you. Warning me about what? You going to report me to my boss? I smiled. Because I just got off the phone with her, and she's very interested in having a chat with you about some missing evidence from your last 3 duty stations. Derek tried to push past me, but I'd positioned myself between him and the truck door. This is harassment. I could have you arrested. By who? Your buddies at Customs? I don't think they're going to be very sympathetic once they find out you've been stealing from federal evidence rooms. I leaned against his truck casually. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can explain where you got the money for that Rolex you're wearing on a customs officer's salary? His hand instinctively moved to cover his watch. I saved up for it. Sure you did. Just like Sandra Martinez saved up to give you $37,000, right? Derek's face went white. How do you know about Sandra? I know about all of them, Derek. Sandra, Jennifer, Rebecca, and the two before them, whose names you probably don't even remember. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo. This is Sandra's daughter, by the way. She's 8 years old. Had to change schools when Mommy lost the house because Daddy's replacement cleaned out the college fund. For a moment, I saw something flicker in Derek's eyes. Guilt, maybe, or just fear at being caught. But it passed quickly, replaced by the cold calculation of a predator who'd been cornered before. You can't prove anything, he said. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to make sure Emily knows exactly what you are before you destroy her life too. I stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen, Derek. You're going to walk away from my wife. You're going to stop taking her calls, stop seeing her, stop filling her head with lies about our divorce settlement. And if I don't, then I'm going to make your life very complicated. See, the thing about working for Homeland Security is that we have access to all sorts of interesting databases. Financial records, travel patterns, communication intercepts. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look. Derek tried to push past me again, but I caught his wrist. Not hard enough to hurt him, but firm enough to make my point. I'm not done talking, I said quietly. You made this personal when you brought your con into my house. So now it's personal for me too, and trust me, Derek, you don't want this to be personal. He jerked his hand free, his face flushed with anger and fear. You're threatening a federal officer. No, I'm warning a criminal. There's a difference. I stepped back and let him get in his truck. He peeled out with enough tire smoke to wake the neighbors, but I wasn't worried about him getting away. Derek Miles had been operating under the radar for years, but that was about to change. By morning, every law enforcement agency in the region would have his photo and a detailed breakdown of his suspected crimes. But first, I had to deal with Emily. I found her sitting at our kitchen table, staring at the roses Derek had brought. She looked up when I walked in, her face streaked with tears. Is it true? She asked. What your boss told me on the phone? Is Derek really a criminal? Yes. And those other women, he really stole their money? Yes. She was quiet for a long moment, absently pulling petals from one of Derek's roses. How long have you known? I suspected something was wrong when he ran after Googling my name. I confirmed it this morning when I saw his personnel file. I sat down across from her. Emily, I need you to tell me exactly what Derek asked you to do. Did you give him access to our bank accounts? No, but... She hesitated. He asked me to get copies of our financial statements for the divorce attorney. What else? He wanted me to move our savings into a separate account. Said it would protect the money during the divorce proceedings. Her voice was barely a whisper. I was going to do it tomorrow. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of relief and rage. Relief that she hadn't actually given Derek access to our money yet, and rage that he'd come so close to destroying our financial future. Em, if you'd moved that money, it would have been gone within 24 hours. Derek would have disappeared, and you would have been left with nothing. I know that now. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Nick, I'm so sorry. I was angry and hurt, and he made me feel special. I wanted to believe that someone could love me the way he pretended to. He's very good at what he does. You're not the first intelligent woman to fall for his act. But I should have known better. I should have talked to you instead of... She gestured helplessly at the roses scattered across the table. Yeah, you should have. But I should have been paying attention to my marriage instead of just my job. I reached across the table and took her hand. We both screwed up, Em. The question is whether we can fix it. She squeezed my fingers. Do you think we can, after everything that's happened? I don't know, but I'd like to try. We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us processing the wreckage of the past few days. Finally, Emily spoke. What happens to Derek now? That depends on how cooperative he decides to be with the federal investigation that's about to land on his head like a ton of bricks. I smiled grimly. But I wouldn't worry about Derek anymore. He's about to have much bigger problems than our marriage. As if summoned by my words, my phone rang. Director Walsh's name appeared on the screen. We got him, she said without preamble. Derek Miles was arrested 20 minutes ago trying to board a flight to Mexico City. TSA flagged him when his name popped up in our system. What about the evidence theft? We found over $200,000 in cash in his apartment, plus jewelry and electronics that match items reported missing from evidence rooms in 3 different states. This guy's been running his operation for at least 5 years. I looked at Emily, who was watching me with anxious eyes. What about the women he conned? That's a separate investigation, but with his financial records, we should be able to track down most of the stolen money. Some of these women might actually get their savings back. After hanging up, I told Emily what had happened. She stared at me in shock. He's really gone? Just like that? Just like that. Derek Miles is going to be a guest of the federal prison system for a very long time. Emily buried her face in her hands and started crying. Not the delicate tears of earlier, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere primal. I moved around the table and held her while she cried, feeling the weight of everything we'd both lost and everything we might still be able to save. I was such a fool, she whispered against my shoulder. No, you were lonely. And Derek was a professional predator who knew exactly how to exploit that loneliness. I stroked her hair gently. The important thing is that you didn't go through with it. You didn't actually give him our money or file the divorce papers. She pulled back to look at me. But I was going to. If you hadn't figured out what he was, I would have destroyed our entire life for a man who was planning to rob me blind. But you didn't, and now we have a chance to figure out how to fix what's really wrong between us. Emily nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I want to try, Nick, I really do. But I need you to understand, the problems Derek exploited were real. I have been lonely in our marriage. I have felt neglected and taken for granted. I know, and that's on me to fix. It's on both of us to fix, she corrected. I should have talked to you about how I was feeling instead of looking for validation somewhere else. I kissed her forehead gently. We'll figure it out, Em. We'll get counseling. We'll make time for each other. We'll rebuild what we lost. But first, we need to deal with the fallout from Derek's con. What kind of fallout? Well, for starters, your friends Karen and Gina know about the affair, and they were encouraging you to leave me for Derek. Once word gets out about what Derek really was, that's going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Emily's face went pale. Oh, God. Karen was the one who introduced me to Derek at yoga class. She said he was perfect for me. Karen introduced you? She said he'd been asking about me, wanted to know if I was happily married. Emily's voice was hollow with realization. She set me up, didn't she? Karen helped Derek target me. I felt that familiar cold rage settling in my chest. Tell me everything about how you met Derek. Every detail you can remember. As Emily recounted the story of her introduction to Derek Miles, a picture began to emerge that made my blood run cold. This wasn't a random encounter at a yoga class. It was a carefully orchestrated setup, with Karen serving as Derek's inside source of information about Emily's marriage and our financial situation. Which meant Karen wasn't just a bad friend who'd encouraged Emily's affair. She was Derek's accomplice in a federal crime. And accomplices, in my experience, rarely acted alone. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day conducting surveillance on Karen Mitchell. Emily's best friend lived in a McMansion in the suburbs, drove a BMW she couldn't afford on her retail manager's salary, and had been Derek's inside source for information about our marriage. I parked across from her house at 7 a.m. and watched her morning routine through high-powered binoculars. Karen was a creature of habit coffee on the back deck while checking her phone. 45 minutes getting ready for work. Quick stop at Starbucks on the way to the mall where she managed a jewelry store. At 10:30, she received a phone call that changed her entire demeanor. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could read body language well enough to know she was panicking. She kept looking around nervously, as if expecting to be arrested at any moment. Derek had probably been allowed his one phone call from jail, and he'd used it to warn his accomplices that the game was up. I followed Karen to her store and watched from the food court as she had an intense conversation with her assistant manager, a young woman named Brittany who kept shaking her head and backing away. Whatever Karen was asking her to do, Brittany wanted no part of it. 20 minutes later, Karen left the store carrying a large shopping bag and drove to a storage unit facility across town. I watched from a distance as she opened Unit 247 and began loading boxes into her car. Even from 50 yards away, I could see the fear in every movement. Karen was destroying evidence. I called Director Walsh. Patricia, I need a favor. Can you get a federal warrant for a storage unit? I think Derek's accomplice is destroying evidence right now. How sure are you? Sure enough to stake my career on it. Give me the address. I'll have agents there in 20 minutes. I stayed in position and watched Karen make 3 trips from the storage unit to her car, loading what looked like financial documents and electronics. She was almost finished when the federal agents arrived. Karen's arrest was anticlimactic. She saw the agents approaching and simply sat down on the curb next to her car, crying. No dramatic chase, no defiant last stand, just the quiet surrender of someone who knew their luck had finally run out. Agent Rodriguez, the lead investigator, called me an hour later. Your tip paid off, Nick. We found records of at least 12 women Derek targeted over the past 5 years, plus financial documents showing how Karen helped him research potential victims. She was getting a 10% cut of whatever Derek stole. What about the other women Derek conned? Karen kept detailed files on all of them, bank account information, personal details, even copies of their house keys. This operation was way more sophisticated than we initially thought. I drove home feeling a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. Derek was in jail, Karen was in jail, and Emily was safe. But the emotional wreckage of the past week was still scattered all around us like debris from a tornado. Emily was waiting for me in the kitchen, her face pale but determined. I saw the news about Karen's arrest, she said. They're calling her Derek's accomplice in a federal fraud investigation. That's what she was. For how long? At least 5 years, probably longer. I sat down across from her. I need you to think carefully about your friendship with Karen. Did she ever ask unusual questions about our finances, our marriage, our daily routines? Emily was quiet for a long moment, her face growing paler as she processed the implications of my questions. She asked about our retirement accounts last month, said she was thinking about switching financial advisors and wanted to know who we used. Emily's voice was barely a whisper, and she's been asking about our marriage problems for months. I thought she was just being a good friend, letting me vent. She was gathering intelligence for Derek. Every complaint you made about our marriage, every detail about our financial situation, she was passing it all along to help him plan his approach. So none of it was real. Karen's friendship? Derek's interest in me, it was all just part of a con? Derek's interest in you was real, but not for the reasons you thought. He saw you as a target, not a person. And Karen saw you as a paycheck. Emily buried her face in her hands. How could I have been so stupid? How did I not see what was happening? Because they were professionals, and you're a decent person who assumes other people are decent too. That's not stupidity, that's humanity. But I betrayed our marriage for people who were planning to rob us blind. You made a mistake. A big one, but still just a mistake. The important thing is that you didn't go through with it. Emily looked up at me with tears in her eyes. What happens now? Between us, I mean. That depends on what you want to happen. I want to fix this. I want to rebuild what we had, but better this time. I want to be married to someone who sees me and talks to me and makes me feel like I matter. And I want to be married to someone who trusts me enough to tell me when something's wrong instead of looking for solutions outside our marriage. We looked at each other across the kitchen table, both of us scarred by the events of the past week, but still willing to try again. It's going to take time, Emily said. I know. And counseling. Lots of counseling. I know. And you're going to have to be patient with me while I figure out how to trust my own judgment again. If I could be so wrong about Karen and Derek, how do I know I'm not wrong about other things? The same way I know I can trust you not to cheat on me again. We take it one day at a time and we keep talking to each other. Emily reached across the table and took my hand. I love you, Nick. I never stopped loving you, even when I was angry and hurt and making terrible decisions. I love you too, Em, and I promise I'm going to do better at showing it. We sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, holding hands and processing everything that had happened. Finally, Emily spoke. What about Gina? She knew about Derek too. Was she part of it? I'd been wondering the same thing. Gina had been encouraging Emily's affair just as enthusiastically as Karen, and in my experience, financial predators rarely worked with just one accomplice. I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. As if summoned by our conversation, Emily's phone rang. Gina's name appeared on the screen. Answer it, I said. But put it on speaker. Emily accepted the call with shaking hands. Emily? Oh my God, I just heard about Karen on the news. Is it true? Was she really helping that guy Derek steal money? Gina's voice carried just the right note of shocked disbelief, but something about her tone made my instincts prickle. It's true, Emily said. Derek was a con artist and Karen was helping him target married women. I can't believe it. I mean, I knew Karen had money problems, but I never thought she'd do something like this. Gina paused. Emily, you didn't give Derek access to your bank accounts, did you? There it was. The question that revealed Gina's true interest in the conversation. No, Emily lied smoothly. Nick figured out what Derek was before I did anything stupid. Thank God. I was so worried when you told me you were thinking about leaving Nick for Derek. Something about that guy just seemed too good to be true. Emily and I looked at each other. If Gina had been suspicious of Derek, why had she encouraged Emily's affair? Gina, can I ask you something? Emily said. If you thought Derek seemed too good to be true, why did you keep telling me to leave Nick for him? There was a long pause before Gina answered. I just wanted you to be happy, sweetie. You seemed so miserable in your marriage, and Derek made you smile again. I guess I ignored my instincts because I wanted to believe he was genuine. It was a reasonable explanation, but something about Gina's tone still bothered me. I made a mental note to have Director Walsh run a background check on Gina Martinez. After Emily hung up, I shared my concerns. She seemed genuinely surprised about Karen, Emily said. And she's right that she encouraged me to leave you for Derek, but so did a lot of people once they saw how happy he made me. Maybe. But in my line of work, you learn to pay attention to the questions people ask. Gina's first concern was whether you'd given Derek access to our money. That's not a normal friend reaction. What would be a normal reaction? Asking if you're okay. Asking if Derek hurt you. Asking what she can do to help. Instead, she went straight to the financial angle. Emily considered this. So, what do we do? We wait and see what the investigation turns up. If Gina was involved, the evidence will surface eventually. These kinds of operations always leave paper trails. The evidence surfaced sooner than I expected. The next morning, Director Walsh called with an update that made my blood run cold. Nick, we found something in Karen's files that you need to know about. Gina Martinez wasn't just aware of Derek's operation. She was recruiting targets for him. We found detailed profiles on at least 6 women, including your wife. What kind of profiles? Financial information, marital problems, daily routines, security vulnerabilities. Gina had been feeding Derek intelligence on potential victims for over 2 years. I felt that familiar cold rage settling in my chest. Where is she now? That's the problem. Gina Martinez disappeared sometime yesterday evening. Her house is empty, her car is gone, and her bank accounts have been cleaned out. We think Karen's arrest spooked her into running. I looked out the kitchen window at Emily, who was working in her garden, trying to find some normalcy in the aftermath of our crisis. She had no idea that another predator had been circling our marriage, gathering information and waiting for the right moment to strike. But Gina had made one crucial mistake. She'd run instead of staying to play innocent, and running made her a fugitive, which gave me legal authority to hunt her down using every resource at my disposal. Patricia, I want to be part of the task force looking for Gina. Nick, this is personal for you. That's going to cloud your judgment. This is exactly why I need to be involved. I know these people, I know their patterns, and I know what they're capable of. Plus, Emily trusts me to handle this. There was a long pause. Okay, but you follow my lead, and if I think you're getting too emotionally involved, you're off the case. Understood. I hung up and walked outside to where Emily was planting new roses to replace the ones Derek had brought. Em, we need to talk. She looked up at me with dirt-stained gloves and fear in her eyes. What now? Gina was working with Derek and Karen. She's been gathering information on you for over 2 years, waiting for the right time to help Derek make his move. Emily sat back on her heels, staring at me in shock. Gina too? Gina too. And she ran when Karen got arrested, which means she's now a federal fugitive. So all of my closest friends were plotting against me? It looks that way. Emily pulled off her gardening gloves and threw them on the ground. How is that possible, Nick? How could I be so completely wrong about people I've known for years? Because they're very good at what they do. And you're a trusting person. That's not a character flaw, Em. It's one of the things I love about you. Right now, it feels like the stupidest thing in the world. I knelt down beside her in the garden and took her dirty hands in mine. Listen to me. You are not responsible for other people's choices to lie and steal and manipulate. Karen chose to betray your friendship for money. Gina chose to help criminals target you. Derek chose to con women out of their life savings. None of that is your fault. But I fell for all of it. Because you're human. And because they were professionals who had been planning this for years, Emily leaned against my shoulder, and I could feel her trembling. What if there are others? What if everyone I trust is just waiting to betray me? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Em, you can't let fear of being hurt again keep you from trusting anyone. That's not living. That's just surviving. We sat in the garden for a long time, holding each other while the morning sun warmed our faces. Finally, Emily pulled back and looked at me. Are you going to find Gina? Yes. And when you do, she's going to face justice for what she did to you and all the other women Derek targeted. Emily nodded grimly. Good, because I want her to know that she picked the wrong family to mess with. I kissed her forehead gently. She definitely did that. 3 days later, we found Gina Martinez in a motel outside Phoenix, trying to establish a new identity with forged documents. She'd made the classic fugitive mistake of running to a place she'd been before, Derek's old hunting ground, where she probably thought she could blend in with his previous victims. Instead, she walked straight into a federal task force that had been monitoring every known associate of Derek's operation. Gina's arrest was the final piece of the puzzle. With her cooperation, we were able to identify and recover stolen assets worth over $500,000, returning money to women who'd thought they'd never see their savings again. But more importantly for Emily and me, Gina's capture meant we could finally close the door on this chapter of our lives and focus on rebuilding our marriage. The counseling was hard work, months of difficult conversations about trust, communication, and the ways we'd both failed each other. But slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild what Derek and his accomplices had tried to destroy. Emily learned to trust her instincts again, and I learned to pay attention to my wife's emotional needs, instead of just assuming she was fine. We established new routines, new boundaries, and new ways of connecting with each other that didn't leave room for predators to exploit our vulnerabilities. 6 months after Derek's arrest, Emily and I renewed our wedding vows in a small ceremony attended only by family members and friends we'd carefully vetted. It wasn't the same marriage we'd had before. It was stronger, more honest, and built on a foundation of hard-won wisdom about the importance of protecting what matters most. As we exchanged rings for the second time, I looked into Emily's eyes and saw not just love, but the kind of deep trust that can only come from surviving something terrible together and choosing to rebuild rather than walk away. Derek Miles was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Karen Mitchell got 8 years. Gina Martinez got 10 years and was ordered to pay restitution to all of Derek's victims. But the real victory wasn't their punishment. It was the fact that Emily and I had refused to let their betrayal destroy what we'd built together. We'd faced the worst that predators could throw at us, and we'd emerged stronger, wiser, and more committed to each other than ever before. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let the people who tried to destroy you succeed in their mission. And sometimes, when you're very lucky and very determined, you get to build something better from the wreckage they left behind.